I really love the part where Kanbaru is leaping from the lily to try to, like, get closer to Hitagi, and Hitagi takes her giant pair of scissors and, like, chops her in half.
Mm.
Because
That's rough, man.
it is so...
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chatty AF, the anime feminist podcast. My name is Toni. I am a contributing editor here at AniFem, and I am joined today by Peter and Vrai.
Hey, I'm Vrai. I'm a daily operations manager here at AniFem. Sometimes I post on Blue Sky at writervrai, where I also post the freelance stuff I'm doing. But mostly I'm tired and sad about vampires.
I'm Peterfobian. I'm a manager of YouTube content strategy at Crunchyroll. I'm an editor here at Anime Feminist, and I'm at Peterfobian on Blue Sky.
And you can find me at poetpedagogue on Blue Sky and other social media platforms. We're back today to talk about the second half of Bakemonogatari. I thank you both for just humoring me on this wondrous journey that is Monogatari, this wondrous roller coaster. For those of y'all who have not been listening up until now, last week we covered episodes 1 through 8. So if you haven't watched those episodes or listened to that podcast, I suggest you go back and check those out, because we are going to be jumping right into talking about the second half of Bakemonogatari from episodes 10 through 15.
Which I hope you already watched, because you can't now.
Yeah, I guess we might want to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, they really fucked up this licensing deal. Oh my goodness. So the really weird thing about Monogatari is that the first 12 episodes are available on Crunchyroll in standard definition, really low quality, and then the last 3 episodes were only available on Funimation until Funimation decided to go bye-bye, and the whole thing was available on Funimation in HD. And the thing is, there is no Blu-ray of the series. So now I guess Monogatari is hashtag lost media.
Well, briefly looking over the Wikipedia, it looks like the last 3 episodes didn't get TV airings. They were O&As, like they only aired online or something to that effect, which I guess would mean they fall under separate licensing, but I'm not sure how just those fell through the cracks.
Oh, were those the 3 episodes that had the animated version of Tsubasa Cat's OP?
Yeah. Which I hate. We'll talk about that.
Let's talk about it. Okay, so let's rank the Monogatari OPs while we're at it.
Oh, that was a nice segue.
Should we rank them? Should we rank them on a tier list, or should we rank them in order of our favorite to least favorite?
It might be easiest to keep track of the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I think so.
My personal favorite is definitely, I just love Staple. I just love all these flying staplers in the sky, the industrial landscapes, kind of contrasted with this very warm music that's like so loving but also a little spicy, and a little like, I love the jangly guitars that remind me of the alt rock I loved growing up. I don't know. It's just it tickles my happy zone a lot. Oh, that sounded weird, but well, okay, but like, that's my number one. But does anyone else? What are y'all's number one?
Probably Kanbaru's, because that's the one where the visual. I really like both the visuals and the song. The other ones tend to break down one way or the other. There's not I don't hate any of the songs, but hers is the one that I think it matches up really nicely, and also I just like listening to it. I don't know. It just has. I really like the pastels. I like the sort of sweepy camera stuff, and the sort of it's very of its era romance type boarding.
Yeah, I love the shot where she's in the distance sitting beneath the basketball hoop, and Araragi and Senjogahara are facing each other in the foreground. Yeah, that's probably my favorite OP too. I'm Team Kanbaru for as far as the openings are concerned. I do like, I'd say The staple, the crab one is like either 2 or 3. I don't know whether I like that one or Tsubasa Cat more.
Yeah, I really love the part where Kanbaru is leaping from the lily to try to like get closer to Hitagi, and Hitagi takes her giant pair of scissors and like chops her in half.
Mm.
Because
That's rough, man.
it is so,
Yeah.
and I think it really captures kind of their dynamic, right, and like the essence of what happened, right, like how Kanbaru tried to get closer to Hitagi and like support her, and Hitagi was just like, nope, I'm gonna hurt you now.
Yeah, it's a really good, clean visualization of her character conflict.
And it's also like an interesting parallel to like, I don't know, like Hitagi is kind of falling gracefully into the sky and Araragi catches her, but Kanbaru is like jumping to get to know Hitagi, and Hitagi's like, nope, fuck you.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I like Tsubasa. I think it's probably Tsubasa Cat is my second favorite. I mean, issues aside, just with how unnecessary certain parts are, I think it's the other one that does a really good job of having some visual storytelling. I think with me, OPs, I know some people who only care about the music, but for me, it's kind of like the whole experience, right? So I do think all the music is really good, and I recognize a lot of it just from walking around. I think I said this last time, walking around conventions for most of the 2010s. So a lot of iconic songs for sure. But as far as like the total package, I think Tsubasa Cat's number 2, maybe followed by.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I got to Nadeko's that I was like, oh, I've heard this song before. And I think it's so old that I would see it in MADs, MADs. I don't know if either of you ever ran across those back in ye old, like, Nico Nico and YouTube.
Oh, I'd still run into them. They're still on YouTube. Sakuga Mads and stuff. Yeah.
I miss them. Well, I don't see as often the ones, like the full-on ones where people would trace over full OPs with like with different fandoms, and it was really awesome, and I miss that.
I remember seeing those, but I remember seeing it with like the Evangelion OP, but then like random cartoon characters. But that's I think something completely different.
Well, I remember the Eizouken OP came out, and also the Jujutsu Kaisen ED1. Those ones had crazy fan art of people
my God,
putting
that
other
was so
characters in
good.
their place. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's still around. You just gotta it's just gotta be influential enough. It's gotta pop off and have a good visual style and beat, and then people will emerge from their basements and their garages.
Well, I feel like people do clips rather than the whole song these days, but perhaps I'm just old man yell at cloud. It's still
Usually
cool.
there is a specific sequence that people like onto, like the dances or when they're doing the poses in Eizouken, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, of the other ones, I think I respect. I agree with you, Peter. I respect most of Tsubasa's opening in terms of being an emotional mood piece, as it were. Especially, honestly, I like the photo collage one better in some ways, just because of the sort of deliberate incongruity of like the photographs and the posing versus the lyrics. I think that's a nice encapsulation of her character in a more subtle way.
You know, they just did it because they were animating the other one, but they knew they couldn't get away with putting it on broadcast television, though. But sometimes art comes from, necessity rather than desire to put something out.
I don't hate sexual assault imagery, right? Like, I'm not someone who's like anti-sexual assault imagery sometimes, but you do have to wonder, like, but I usually like it to serve more of a purpose.
Yeah. For me, this leaned heavily into titillation, right?
Yeah, just including sexual assault to like create a sense of a mood, right? I don't like. I do want to think on some level it does connect to kind of the Tsubasa's experiences of abuse and like her like struggling with all of these emotions that are just so overwhelming her. Like, you could read it that way, but like that's a stretch. I don't know.
Yeah, see, like, and listen, I don't have a problem with artful depictions of sexual assault imagery. I feel like it's used a lot in a lot of shoujo because of censorship standards, and I'm still Mr. When are they going to license the Kazetoki no Uta OVA discotheque, please, for me, discotheque, me, and 3 other people? But it feels, I don't know, it feels like it cheapens her arc to use that imagery there. Especially, I guess we're just getting into this now, especially you open with that during the big confrontation on the rooftop scene, and you contrast that with, and her big inner angst is that she has an unrequited crush on Araragi, and like, oh, that's it? It's just that 5 out of 5 of these girls have at some point thirsted for this unremarkable man's dick. And for that you pulled out a cannon to shoot a fly? Like, that's what that is to me.
Yeah, and I think for me it's like, I think on some level I like get it but I feel like to get that, to like understand why she might be feeling all this stuff, you have to have seen like the other parts of the show, so it just doesn't work until you've seen those, because you don't know like what they've been through together, really.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I think I fell on this. Like, honestly, you've been talking this show up for a while, Toni, and specifically later arcs in regards to Hanekawa specifically. So I assumed this wasn't where things were leaving off with her, but just like if this was my impression with no preamble, I would be pretty upset. And I think I still was upset by the conclusion because so much of it has been about, I guess we're just kind of launching right into this. Her whole arc's about how she's been, suffering abuse at home, and it has this setup in the first half of the season where she's like literally never at home. She's just walking around all the time because she just doesn't want to be at her house. And then the introduction to this arc was the flashback scene where I think Araragi first discovered that she was suffering physical abuse, where she's got the mark on her cheek. And I remember my impression during that period was just like, oh, so he's known for quite some time that she's suffering abuse, and it doesn't seem like he's really felt compelled to do anything about it. Like, the only time Araragi feels like he needs to get involved if it involves oddities or apparitions or whatever they call them. And now the like precipitating incident isn't anything at home. It's just he gets a girlfriend, which is so upsetting for her that the Tsubasa Cat, or what, like Black Hanekawa, escapes again, and they have this whole arc. And I mean, I guess like as kind of a trigger, that could be okay depending upon how things go. But I don't feel like she got any catharsis or conclusion either, because the whole thing just kind of the climax is he gets Shinobu to come out again, who basically just gets rid of Black Hanekawa the same way they had before, and which pretty much, I guess, guarantees that Black Hanekawa is going to come out sometime again in the future. Hanekawa still feels exactly the same way she did before and has bottled it up. It's implied she doesn't even have any memory of what happened. Or maybe she does and she doesn't want to say anything, so she's basically been set back to square one, still kind of silently pining for him, just like she was in episode 1 and before episode 1. And yeah, that just feels like it really sucks for her, and she's going to be put basically in the same position as Kambaru, where since they aren't the central couple, they just have to continue orbiting around Senjogahara and Araragi, being envious of their happiness while getting no forward movement themselves.
So they should date.
Yeah, that would solve everyone's problems with it. I bet you just described the plot of so many doujinshi, Vrai.
Yeah. I've also described Toradora. No, I agree. I think I see in sort of galaxy brain theoretical land, in the broader scope of plot outlining, if you will, why this moment is so important to Hanekawa, because clearly she's been undergoing abuse for a long time since her childhood. She had this magical sort of fairy tale experience that's like, oh, she's finally the special. She has sort of her wakaba experience where she meets somebody and she's really important, and it feels like this moment where like, my life has been so shitty, but now finally this is going to be okay, and she pins all of her hope on that and this sort of prince, like sort of herself as the princess in the fairy tale, and then it doesn't work out like that. And I can see in theory how that would be really shattering for her. But so my problem is more that I think the context of both some really bad storytelling decisions and pacing decisions specifically regarding her and sort of the context of the other arcs really cheapen what I think is a genuine point of emotional distress for her. Because, you know, like I sort of said, I was being snide about it, but, you know, Senjogahara's arc is about her and Araragi entering a relationship in some sense. Mayoi doesn't have romantic feelings for Araragi, but apparently now she just exists to show up so he can make capital H hilarious pedophile jokes, which I hate and make me want to die. You know, Kangaroo is explicitly a lesbian. But even she gets that weird scene that never even gets written off as lol JK, where she comes on to him and seems to sincerely be offering to fuck him. And then Nadeko is also pining for him. So it just, her feelings aren't special because she's carrying this longing for him. It just feels like, oh, everyone, it does feel like every girl who's ever lived is cursed by this dick, and I feel bad for all of them. And I also think that just from a writing storytelling structure perspective, like Peter mentioned, it sort of builds up that Hanekawa is a survivor of parental abuse, and that's what mainly gets talked about in terms of her characterization. But then because that initial outburst, as it turns out, happens in the prequel films, I assume, the anime just goes, lol, that happened off screen. Anyway, what's really important is her romantic feelings for this really unimportant man. And then even those aren't she's not even really the focus of her own arc. One of her episodes gets overwritten with Staple, and it's about the date scene, which is wonderful, but she's supposed to have a 5-parter. One of those parts isn't even about her, and the climax isn't about her either. It's about Araragi accepting that he has to value his own life and ask other people for help. Hanekawa is a tool in her own story, and I hate that.
Yeah, and it's kind of a whiplash, I would say, too, because I feel like the way she's set up in the first half of the series is so great, like right up through the Snake arc, because there's all those scenes where she's taking calls from just walking around town. In Mayoi Snail, she has the scene where she shows up in the park as well, and she's also able to see Mayoi. I mean, not implying, I think Araragi straight out says it's because he knows she doesn't want to go back home, which is why she's able to see her. And then just the way that their conversations usually go a lot, you can sense that she kind of has an agenda, and the way they do like visual framing in this show. Like one of my favorite moments in this second half here was when she was talking to him in the bookstore, and it just freezes on her face real quick. A still shot around a bunch of really nauseating camera move scenes. I don't know why they started doing that. But yeah, she's kind of like looking at him out of the side of her eye. So I feel like there's definitely been like a lot of table setting for this, and I liked the build up so that you could kind of sense what her situation was, and there's a lot of indications as to the fact that she has feelings for him, and she's kind of being like low-key manipulative a bit without trying to sabotage him or anything. And then in the arc, it just kind of comes to nothing for her.
Yeah, it also ended up like the other major thing that was like, well, okay, in abstract, yes, this is true, but in context, it pisses me off, is that line about how what you think a few months of being love struck isn't as, damaging as 10 years of family abuse. And I'm like, well, I love stories where teenagers have no sense of scale, so every emotion is the most important emotion that's ever been. But because of how because this is a boy helps sad girl series, it ends up inadvertently feeling like it's cheapening her drama, as though this is the real thing that's really important and he needs to address with her and worry about. And I got really mad.
I definitely think the way was supposed to be, I don't know. I can see how the framing would go like, yeah, my life sucks, and then I find this guy I like, and then some girl swoops in, and that was just like a kick in the teeth on the one good thing that's happened to me. But yeah, the way they decided to go with it was very like, this is worse than everything else that's happened, and I kind of got it. I doubt that a little bit.
This is so interesting because I like her arc.
Well, you okay? So you have said many times that she gets a lot more later on.
Oh yeah, I mean I think the first time that I watched her arc, I felt nothing. I think I was like, what's going on here? I think I had a similar reaction to y'all where I was just like, what is going on? Really, really, really. But I think on rewatch, I actually really, really appreciated it. On a different level. I think part
So
of
with
yeah,
the benefit of uh, being able to watch it in retrospect, you can see how it's establishing things in the future
yes.
for the future. Okay, I can accept that. I'm on board.
I think part of it for me is that there's a lot of really interesting ideas in her arc that in ways that her I get that I get the frustration with like watching her be kind of this tool in Araragi's growth as a character, right? And like the climactic moment is where Araragi asks Shinobu for help and like, has to, but I also think that part of that is also related to the way that he's treating her. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the way that he talks to her feels like he's trying to force his values on her. He says things in this arc that really show a complete lack of understanding of the experience of abuse, right? He says, for example, there have been others in your position who've survived without the aid of apparitions, right? And that's like fucking horrible to say to her, right? That's like not a great thing to say to somebody when basically saying like there have been other people who have gone through abuse and then not lashed out at other people and have not and kept everything repressed and bottled up. You should do that too, right?
Well, see, I think that works if you think about it as metaphor, but as literal, I mean, that struck me as pretty standard dialogue for like lots of people are abused and then don't become mass murderers.
Yeah.
Because we know that Black Hanekawa has attacked people.
Right, that true. That is also true, right? And that's the thing about Monogatari is it's like on some it's messy in its metaphors in a sense that like you have to kind of like ignore what's literally happening. To be okay with it, right? Like I mean, and I think the same can go for like this, like a lot of the sexual violence in Monogatari, where it's just like you watch it and you're like, this isn't literally happening, except it is, right? You know what I mean? Like you try to like brush it off and be like, oh, this isn't like, even in like Nadeko Snake, where it's like the camera's panning all over her body and it's like, oh, so disgusting, and it's like, oh. It's not like she's literally in a child porno, but it looks like she is. And the thing is but I think though that like is such an interesting moment though, like to kind of say, right. But the thing is that you also have to put in the context of, right, like all these other girls that he's seen, right? If we think about apparitions as like a metaphor for either self-harm or harming others, or like deep wounds, right? Then I think right that like that statement is really complicated, right? Because he's trying to like in other parts of the series, right? The apparitions kind of serve as multiple kind of things, right? Like Kambaru's arm that she wants to cut off both represents like her repressed desire, right? But also then what her repressed desire does leads her to do, which is to hurt people, right? So it's a complicated statement, but I think also
Yeah.
there's these moments where he like accuses her of being a victim of his mesmerism, right? Like, and like all these different things where he's kind of his self-hatred, right? And his repression of his own like survival instincts and reflected back on her, and they're bringing out those aspects of each other, right? In really negative ways.
So the mesmerism part would definitely have made things simpler for him, since he could extricate himself from a very difficult social situation if he could write it off as some sort of being caused by some sort of supernatural element. And in regards to the whole apparition thing, I do like think, at least in the cases where it's something that's been internalized, like with Kanbaru and Hanekawa, I think it kind of takes the emotions they're experiencing and removes their ability to control them. Since, I mean, Kanbaru wanting to beat Araragi to death is very understandable, and I don't
And
think she would ever
relatable
do
even.
it. Yeah, she wouldn't do that under normal circumstances. Just like Hanekawa wants to lash out at her guardians, or maybe even just the society at large that allows these people to have power over her. But she would not do that, except that when the apparition takes control, they don't care about consequences or human life. So I think it's basically giving their darkest feelings the ability to be acted upon, where they normally would never do that kind of thing, right?
I do think Black Hanekawa is a fun character. Even though, we all know that's not how dissociative identity works. It's the growing up with Yu-Gi-Oh in me, but I love the protective alter ego trope that sort of has a knowing relationship with the other self. Like, that is catnip for me, in fact. So I thought I kept getting, it got to a point where I was getting more and more frustrated that, of course it's all filtered through Araragi, because that's the person she's hung all her emotions on. So of course it is, but I really was sick of his shit at this point. So.
Yeah, and the thing is that he really just victimizes her over and over again. Like, she's the victim of his mesmerism. She's a victim of, like, Black Hanekawa, right? She's the victim of, but she's also, like, forcing her unpleasant work on Black Hanekawa, right? And then Black Hanekawa is a victim of her, right?
But yeah, I think part of why, besides the obvious, the sexual assault imagery in the animated version of her opening upsets me so much is that otherwise I think it's a really neat duology of her very brittle public image versus the sort of very messy, fluid internal struggles that she's having that are very expressive. And my favorite part of the last episode is just the really beautiful cuts of Hanekawa having a breakdown and not even having the voice for it, but just so full of pain. And I don't know, I really thought that was quite emotive. But, titties.
Yeah, is there? So, like, before the opening, I hadn't even gotten like, obviously there was abuse in the household, but it seemed like it was like violent physical abuse. I don't know if I had caught anything that would imply that it was sexual before that, although it becomes pretty apparent at that point.
That's the thing, is I don't think that the narrative or the text of the narrative is literally implying that she's a survivor of sexual abuse in the way that, like, Hitagi is. It's just lurid because fuck you, we need some fan service in here. And so it's through sexual assault imagery. I hate that.
Would y'all like a spoiler? Would you like a spoiler?
Oh,
Okay.
It is what you're saying? It is
No.
sexual abuse?
I'm not saying it necessarily
okay.
is or isn't, but would you like to know?
Okay.
Yeah?
It's not.
It's not? Then what's the point of the stuff in the opening?
To jerk off to, Peter.
Yeah,
That's the point of it.
Are the hands metaphors? Like, what? For what?
But I also think
Yeah.
what's,
So
what's,
see, that throws
yeah.
off your entire interpretation of her situation, doesn't it?
My interpretation?
Mine, I was like, well, after that opening, it has to be sexual assault that she's experiencing in her house. But if it's not, then the opening does nothing but mislead you, just so that you can see some sexual imagery in your OVA, I guess.
Is this stuff we should include in the actual episode, or should we cut this spoiler?
I think it's very relevant to the conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
Because of what they've shown us, you would have to believe that that was an element of it. But nothing before that would indicate it, and it turns out that's not the case. So their decision to include this in the OP was extremely misleading and really affects how you interpret other aspects of the story.
Yeah,
Like,
which
yeah. The whole fact that Black Hanekawa is so sexualized too could be her I don't know if anybody said this already, like externalizing her sexual abuse. But if
Which
there's
is
no
already
element of that at
Hitagi's
home-
story.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if anything, you could read it as like her externalizing her horny for Araragi, or horny in general, that she's not allowed to experience as a girl, right? Like in, as a, the class, the class president, high achieving girl. Um, I think, yeah, but to speak to like what you were saying about like, I think this might actually be a good segue into Nadeko Snake. Because
Mm-hmm.
one of my big problems. Okay, here's one of the things about Monogatari, and the reason that I actually, when people say "fuck you, Nisio Isin," I'm a little bit like, but he might not actually be the source of these problems. It might be more "fuck you, Akibo Shinbo," Akiyuki Shimbo. It might be "fuck
I'm
you,
prepared for
Akiyuki
that.
Shimbo." The reason I say this is because I was very curious. As I was rewatching Nadeko Snake, I was disgusted by the way that her like arc is treated with her the all those flashlights put around her while she's in a swimsuit, and then literally the camera zooming in on her cooch and like going up her body as she's writhing in pain as if it's a child porno. And so
It's really bad.
it's terrible. And so out of like just pure curiosity, right before we had this, I decided I was going to go on a little adventure and read that section of the light novel. And I had it pulled up here just a second ago. And spoiler alert, none of that's there.
Okay, thank you for doing that, because I definitely had that question off and on. Because, like, I'm sure that Araragi still is a creep in some senses. That's just going to be in the text, but I definitely wondered how much of it was amped up once you add visuals.
I'm going to read a couple of a couple sections. We're going to do this Michael Hobbesiverse style, where I'll read it and then you give me your blind reactions.
okay.
Very well.
Or do you want me to send it to you? One of y'all can read it, and then then
God,
it'll be really
I was afraid you
Michael
were gonna say that.
Hobbesiverse style.
I'm curious if you also read the portion of where in the room where she puts on the bloomers.
Oh, I did not read that. I could find that pretty easily, though, I'm sure.
Because that one, I could see how there wouldn't really be a description of like the snake strangling her in sexual terms in like it's just written description, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of social and dialogue aspects that contribute to the scene in the bedroom where they're looking at the scales on her body, where
Yeah,
it seems
that's
like
worth-
Kamparu is really enjoying herself.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
speaking of scenes where I was like, well, you've set this up to be about sexual violence, and then it's just not, I guess. Because when she gets so upset, understandably, about this idea of the body that she has and people looking at her body, and I'm like, okay, so this arc is about her feeling sexualized, probably by older people in her life. And then no, it's just about, how women are fighting over boys. You know how it is.
Yeah, and her whole conclusion too was very like, at the end of the day, he gets the curse removed from her, but I think it's implied that it just goes and kills one or both of the children who had enacted it upon her, and I don't think they really spare a second thought to the consequences of what they just did. And assuming those kids aren't dead, whether or not the bullying would just continue back at her school.
I was fine with that one, honestly, because like that one came down to either you can worry about this theoretical person you've never met, or you can do that at the expense of letting this person who is right in front of you definitely die.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it's just like, did they solve the root problem of what's actually happening to her?
Right, or the symptom of it.
Yeah. So it could just continue. I also found it really strange that his sisters were cut entirely out of that story, despite the fact that obviously she idolizes Araragi, but she knows him secondary to his two sisters. Don't they even go to his house? And they're just, I guess, not there. Very just kind of a notable absence, because all the interactions in the series have to be 2 to 3 people maximum, with Araragi being one of those people for sure.
Okay, I found it. Are you ready, Vrai?
Oh, you sound enthused. I'm ready. Here
go.
we go. Let's get some.
Oh God.
Let's get some incriminating fucking audio on here.
Uh-oh, it sounded not good.
All right, so this is the section where Sengoku is they are looking at her body and seeing the scales for the first time. Vrai, take it away.
A high school boy and a high school girl having a lively and jovial discussion about volleyball shorts while a nearly naked middle school girl stood there on a bed. An outside viewer might see it as a fairly serious case of bullying. Sengoku's bangs, hidden earlier by her hat, were longer than I expected, covering her eyes. Or maybe she was doing it on purpose out of embarrassment. The cuticles of her lustrous black hair shone. It seemed she'd hidden her clothes under my comforter after taking them off. The fact that she was wearing those shorts, as per Kanbaru's ministrations, and that she'd taken even her bra off, suggested that displaying her underwear was more embarrassing than burying her skin for this old female acquaintance of mine.
Ugh.
She undoubtedly... Oh no, it's going to get worse. Don't worry. She undoubtedly looked more provocative than she intended. There in nothing but volleyball shorts. But I didn't understand schoolgirl sensibilities. But, unfortunately, I guess you might say, sex appeal had nothing to do with this situation. What is this? It had taken me a while, but the surprised words found their way out of my mouth when I saw Nadeko Sengoku's skin. Her skin was covered in traces of scales, from the toes of her 2 feet up to her collarbones, clear traces of scales on every inch of her body. For a moment I wondered if scales had grown directly on her body, but I looked closer to realize that wasn't the case. The scales were imprinted onto her body, like with a woodblock print, pressed onto her skin, as it were. Reminds me of rope bondage marks, Kanbaru said.
Kanbaru.
Yeah, we were having a conversation off mic that was my first outing in what I also assume is a normal Monogatari viewer experience, which was lying to myself out of heaping doses of cope.
About what, Vrai? About what?
Where I've decided to assume that Kanbaru is like, 15? And she's also stupid as hell and definitely has ADHD, as you pointed out. So I'm choosing to believe that she hasn't realized that when you're 15, there's starting to get to be this really large gap between you and the 13-year-olds you were in school with last year. And so she's just not thinking herself as now in a different emotional and social class, because let's be real, how much emotionally older is she than a 13-year-old? And that's what I'm choosing to believe, as opposed to Nisio Ishin looked at this lesbian and thought, boy, I bet I can fit so much pedophilia in here.
Oh, God.
But fortunately, or unfortunately, I guess you might say, sex appeal had nothing to do with the situation. It's very clear right there in the text. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Peter.
Right in the text.
He said it. It must be true, right?
Honestly, it is easier to take in text form, I've got to say, because it's like Araragi's still being a fucking creep, but it's more vague and eliding than it is when you've got the visuals there of the camera that between cuts keeps, cutting back to her ass and then her arms squeezing her chest, and like then the spotlights on her ass in case we missed it the first time.
This one, I can definitely see the director taking a lot of a serious scene like the snakes almost killing her and just getting extremely creepy with it, but I definitely think you could say that Nisio Isin was laying the groundwork with this scene for sure. Kind of hard to, you can't write it off as directorial. What do you call it? The director just decided going rogue.
Yeah, it almost feels like the sort of thing that you would like write knowing that you're gonna get an anime and just being like, well, plausible deniability, ladies.
Yeah.
You know, just like there's no like for example, it's not like they're like vividly describing this girl's breasts or like her like you know, her cooch or whatever, like Murakami would or something. Oh my gosh. But, you know, I'm sorry. I'm actually reading the Wind Up Bird Chronicle right now and really liking it. Cancel me.
It's okay, luck.
So yeah, look at the so if you want to see what the blow so in what we were referring to earlier about as the blowjob shot is when they realize the snake is actually like going inside Nadeko through her mouth.
Yeah, okay. See, this is interesting. Yeah. Yeah, so my notes at home said, fuck, are you fucking kidding me? That's a blowjob shot. That's a goddamn deep throat snake. Fuck you. Fuck you so much. Because, yeah, it looks, it's this close-up that has her mouth sort of open and her back arched, and there's, like, saliva flowing down her mouth. And I have seen a tentacle porno in my day, folks at home. But the line in the text is, when I returned my gaze back at her, that's a terrible way to phrase that, Nadeko Sengoku had collapsed face up on the plastic sheet we'd laid on the ground and was twitching freakishly, violently. Her mouth, it was open wide. Her jaw was stretched as far as it would go, like a snake swallowing an egg. Like, that to me sounds more Uncanny Valley body horror.
Yeah.
In a way that you could be, like, do the... Not that this was a good scene, but it's certainly... like the fucking Angela... That, to me, conjures not porno, but, like, Angela at the end of Sleepaway Camp. Like, oh, bodies aren't supposed to do that.
Yeah, that is more creepy horror than I'm not getting anything sexual out of that.
Which again, you know, this is why when I rewatched Monogatari, there was a really apparent difference between the directorial style of Tatsuya Oishi, right, and then Itamura, who took over after him, who later would go on to direct like Case Study of Vanitas, and which is one of my favorite and most sexually like just amazing anime I've ever seen.
Vanitas is sexy.
Itamura takes over after Kizu Monogatari with Nisei Monogatari. Nisei Monogatari is a mess, and I think it's before Itamura really finds his footing as a director. I think it's, and then where I really start to feel Itamura's influence is when we get to second season and Neko Kuro, which I feel are just so much more respectfully directed towards the female characters than Bakemonogatari is. Like, and it's funny because even the things that, okay, we'll get to this when we talk about Nisei, but even the things that really upset me about Bakemonogatari, like say Mayoi getting like fucking groped all the time by Araragi, in Nisei it's like it feels different because of the way that it's directed. Like something that, you know, whereas in Bake, like it's supposed to be slapstick that he's groping her, right?
Right.
I'll be curious what you all think of those scenes in Nisei, because he actually does meaningful directorial choices to make things feel slapstick and to make it to be not really like not shoving it in your face that this boy is groping a child, right? Like to make it, which I mean, obviously, you know, you could question like, you know, is that really necessarily any better? But I take it as an improvement that I'm, you know, not witnessing a boy with his hand on a elementary schooler's breasts.
Yeah, joking about, oh, he's gonna see her panties. And then I die. And then I bury a hole and I die.
Oh, well, that still happens, but, you know.
Yeah. Let's end compliment sandwich. Hello, early cameo of Inukuri, doing Hanekawa's flashback, which was really, really pretty, and I liked it.
Oh my goodness. I love.
Also, we haven't talked about the date, which genuinely, I think maybe I feel like the fan service got to be more annoying to me than it would be because the moments because I like their relationship so much. Like genuinely it feels sincere and authentic within the grounds of nobody in Monogatari talking like a human being.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that car scene too, where she just put her dad right in front of them. Obviously, just to torture Araragi for like literally 20 minutes of screen time. It's very good. It's weird how it's like she is just actively tormenting him, but the scene also comes across as very funny and heartfelt too. It's good. I like their dynamic.
Maybe even more than any of the openings, which I really, really love the ending, and the reveal it comes around to with the stargazing scene is very. I had emotions, and I didn't expect that. I guess.
Mm.
Well, I think part of what's like really like beautiful about it is that it is one of the first times where Hitagi is actually like fully like being vulnerable with Araragi in a way that feels like it's agentic, like she has a choice to be and she chooses to be. I and I think that while simultaneously setting boundaries in like a really honest way based upon her experiences as a survivor, and she has a conversation with him that is the sort of conversation that I've definitely had in the past with lovers that I've had, and honestly, I think that Araragi actually take handles that really well. In that, for once in the goddamn show, he shuts the fuck up, right? And
Mm.
like listens to her and tries to really understand what she's saying, and never pushes her to do anything she doesn't want to do, or you know, and it's very sweet, and I I think that the ED kind of feels a little bit like, yeah, this was here all along, right? Like this side of her, the fact that it was had been playing like through all the different episodes, and then it's kind of revealed, oh, like yeah, this has been a part of her, this part of and a part of the show from the beginning, and I find that really sweet.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because like a lot of the fan service I feel like falls into what is so often frustrating about fan service in that it's based on humiliation and in touch or viewing against the other person's wishes, but which sucks. But Hitagi is so repeatedly able to, especially like there's not really a lot of fan service shots of her after those first 3 or 4 episodes even, but she gets to be very playfully sexual and she gets to set those boundaries and have a serious conversation, in the car ride she's basically pseudo jerking him off while her dad's driving and it's really funny. Like they're cute and it's so like it's sweet and it's nice and he's not like constantly pushing to get further with her, but also he's not, uh, I I think the trend now in a lot of fan service anime is to have male characters who are shrieking and terrified at the concept of a sexually forward woman, whereas like he's interested, but he's also I was so pleasantly surprised when we didn't even get any internal monologue of him being shitty about, waiting for her till she feels comfortable. He was just
Absolutely zero. None.
uh-huh. It was really nice. Like they have a sort of horny teenage relationship that is also really emotional and they talk to each other. And how fucking dare you, Bakemonogatari?
All that bullshit, and then they have a really good central relationship.
It's
Yeah,
very rude.
it very rude of them to, and that's the thing is like, oh gosh, as the series goes on, I really hope that y'all stick around for second season because second season is so good. Oh, it's so good. I love it so much.
I mean, I told you, if people want to listen to us talk about Monogatari. I will continue to watch more Monogatari.
Or if we make a sufficient number of people angry as well, that'd be great.
I would love that. I would love people to be like, hey, listen to us, and then just be like, wow, anime feminist shitting on Monogatari. What is the world
How
coming
dare
to?
they?
How dare they? Feminazis. I'm like actually just looking in the light novels now to see if there's any Araragi being shitty.
Yeah, I also think it's an interesting dynamic too, because I think like in a lot of shoujo, a common dynamic is like the innocent girl, or rather at least an inexperienced girl, and a guy who's like, he's a couple relationships deep or whatever, and he knows, he's really experienced and kind of like, maybe I wouldn't say it depends on the one that you get. Some of them I think push the girls along in an uncomfortable way, but the other ones, it's like they're kind of like leading them, or willing to wait for them in some way, and it's very, I don't think you often see the reverse of that, except as Vrai said, in like harem type series where the girls just want to like their objective is to just fuck this guy, and the guy does not seem to ever want to have sex ever, and is frightened of all these women. So having the dynamic where it seems like the girl is able to be sexually forward without the guy just running away at top speed, and kind of responding to that, I think it's pretty unique dynamic, and like you said, I think it's done very well too. I really love all the Araragi Senjogahara scenes.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the light novel. Not a single shitty thing that he says about her. Nothing.
Wow.
So that's nice.
Yay.
Good job, Araragi.
If you could just excise the fact that he's also, in other unconnected scenes, a fucking pedophile.
Yeah, and like, the thing that I was going to say about, like, second season, it's like, they put him on a bus. They really do. And that's part of what makes second season the best season.
The Araragi bus arc.
Yes. And it's so good. I love that they put him on a bus.
Toward the girls or away from them?
Bus-kun.
Yeah.
Coming right for
Put him on a bus towards Trunk-kun.
Oh my god. Yeah. I think we all agree. Even if we believe prisons should be abolished, we should just save one for Araragi.
I think also.
What was it you said in the Slack? He can be the child of Omelas.
Yes.
This is fine. This specifically is an acceptable sacrifice.
Yeah, it removes a lot of the what do you call it? The horror and ambiguity of that kind of situation. If you just choose an absolute creep to suffer, to experience all the sufferings for society.
I have one question for y'all that's a little bit off the wall, but and then we can kind of wrap up. What do you think? Do you think that this series believes at this point people only save themselves on their own? Because we've gotten to the point, right, where Oshino, who I know you, we haven't talked about Oshino much yet, have we, Vrai?
Not really, because I feel like his character arc is so hung on the fact that that the story doesn't tell us fuck all about him. Like, I'm sorry, princess, your character arc is in another castle.
Yeah, he is. Actually, I'm like trying to decide. Should we talk about his kind of idea that nobody can save anybody else? People can only save themselves on their own. Because I feel like that might come up a lot later. But
I mean, I feel like the end of this, I feel like the last episode sort of implicitly rejects that, right? Because the climactic scene is that Araragi has to ask for help. So, like, yes, people need to have the will to want to live, but, you know, we are social creatures who live in a society, etc., etc., and so we can't really do it on our own.
Yeah, that I really think that too, and I think it's really interesting because I think a lot of what Monogatari is kind of playing with and kind of trying to understand and unpack is kind of the saved the savior and the saved dynamic. And oh god, not me comparing Monogatari to Utena. But I do think that that it's asking similar questions about what does it mean to feel victimized, right? By that dynamic of being saved and to like feel like you're losing your agency as somebody who is being treated like a victim by somebody who wants to save you. I think a lot of Hanekawa's arc is about that, right? Um and so it's very interesting to me that like Araragi like is so hesitant to view himself as somebody who needs to be saved until like literally being about to die. And but I also think it's interesting because I think that there's parts of the series where Oshino is presented in a way that makes it feel like he is it's complicated. Like sometimes it feels like we're meant to like see him as the mouthpiece of the like of the author, right? But then as the series goes on, I feel like his character becomes more and more feeling less like the mouthpiece of the author. Like in the scene, even in the scenes with Kanbaru, right, where he's like describing Kanbaru's deep, dark inner urges, blah 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 blah. This very, very, very uncharitable reading of Kanbaru that almost slots her into this predatory lesbian framework, right?
Mm.
And like, I don't think that we're intended to like be like, yeah, tell that to them, Oshino.
Yeah, I did rather like that one scene ended with Hitagi sticking up for Kanbaru. That she's just being true to herself. Like I feel like I'm really licking up crumbs here in terms of in terms of the relationships between girls that you have promised me. But like the crumbs are there, and
That's why Araragi needs to get put on a bus. Okay, anyways. Okay, so the last thing I wanted us to do are we open to this? Is to kind of rank where the characters are currently at. I'm curious how I want to know how this changes between now and once we get to like maybe after Nekokuro or I mean
I
Neko.
remembered. Hold on, sorry,
Remember
sorry.
something?
Yeah, no, I think my thought that I just I think the thesis that Nishio-isin, at least as he this series is so interesting to talk about because like now there is a bunch of it and you can be like, well, this prefigures this other stuff, but also part of me wants to acknowledge that but also feels less charitable in terms of like also this one season of show just kind of existed on its own for a long time and we have to also look at it as that. So I think that the thesis Nishio-isin wanted to put forward is we're all kind of freaks and that's okay, which I think was less voiced in this space in the 2000s in Japanese pop media. So I have some respect for that. Anyway.
Yeah, I can see.
But also some of these arcs are so unfinished. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's the thing about like Monogatari is that the pacing is glacial, right? It, and
Yeah, and it drops you right in the middle of several character story arcs. So, I mean, like three characters are intertwined in a way that's not really even indicated in the beginning of the series.
Yeah, it's like how Higurashi sort of accidentally didn't invent but popularized the moe boom conception of the yandere just because it took so long for the question and answer versions of Shion's arc to come out. Like at a certain point the media you can write a piece of art slowly, but I am still going to hold you responsible for the half done version that's out there for half a decade and inspires an entire wave of much less intelligent imitators and imitators of those imitators, and I get to be a little mad at you for that.
I think it's especially interesting in the context of when this was written with like say Nadeko, right? Because this was kind of towards the end of the moe boom, if I remember right. Like this is like 2009, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with Moe kind of starting to be on its way out as like the cultural zenith or whatever, I do wonder like is this series kind of attempting to like do something different with like this Moe character and like think through a different way of looking at her? Obviously, in a really gross way towards the beginning. Like during this arc, it's disgusting. But like as like the series goes on, Nadeko becomes, I think, a very interesting examination of Moe and the kind of harms that can happen if somebody kind of internalizes some of these ideas behind Moe. But obviously we haven't
he'll
gotten
still
there
be
yet.
late compared to he'll still be late compared to Higurashi, but I'm prepared to hear him out.
Yeah, definitely. I don't no feelings, but I am interested in seeing what his deconstruction, let's say, looks like.
Yeah, no, I think that that part of that is what makes these opening arcs so difficult to get through, is that it can be really confusing, like seeing just really in media res, like these different characters, like what's going on with them, but then not really be able to see the fullness of them. Again, I'm embarrassed to be comparing the series to Utena again, but I feel like the similar way with watching the first series of this to how I felt watching the student council arc, where the first time I watched the student council arc, I was like, why is Anshi being treated less than human? Why is Utena never actually acknowledging Anshi's humanity and like her right to make her own choices outside of Utena telling her to? Ugh! And of course,
I mean,
that's the entire point. But also, like, the thing is that Utena didn't have a bunch of shots of girls' coochies in school underwear.
And also, well, like, fan service aside, Utena was one anime that told a complete story that aired all at once and was conceived as one production cycle with one production team, whereas Monogatari is like a sprawling multimedia franchise across multiple mediums, across multiple creative teams, and over a decade of artistic growth. And so I don't think one can be blamed for just looking at one anime series or the film series as a singular entity, because that is how they are produced, and you don't know if there's going to be more.
Yep.
It's interesting, though. Like, when you have the older things like this talking about it is interesting. Sometimes it gets better, and sometimes it gets more depressing. Hello, it's me, the Anne Rice fan. But anyway, we were gonna rank some girls.
And the girl in my heart. Okay, S tier. Hitagi. No doubt. S tier character.
I agree.
Yeah. I would put Hitagi S tier. She's very good. I'm usually I'm picky about tsundere characters, but I quite like her. And also, I never really have anyone to pick on the whole astrological chart things, so I'm very happy that Hitagi's birthday is like 4 days after mine.
Oh, wow.
Love that. All right. Hanekawa, where do we put her?
A tier right now with potential to move up. Because I feel like I know what I can put into reading into her arc, but as it unfolds with the material I've seen, there's a lot missing, and it frustrated me.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely liked all of her setup and the stuff it sort of implies is going along with her, but yeah, we didn't get too much closure in the arc, so...
But I do love, like, brittle liar characters. Like, that's an archetype I'm very here for.
Yeah, love that shit.
She's such a mess, and I love her. I support women's wrongs.
She's...
Speaking...
yeah.
Okay. Kambaru.
I have to put Kambaru A tier because of the cope. Purely because of the cope.
If Nadeko Snake didn't happen, I would probably also have her at A. I think it might be B though. I mean, I really like her a lot. It's just if this is what she does now, I think she is like B with potential to move down. So if cool stuff happens, she could move up too. Just like that story arc took like a whole letter grade off.
Yeah, it's weird how like she's generally sort of like other than being, it's almost more that the camera's creepy than her specifically, like because she's sort of sweet and Nadeko seems to feel comforted around her, but but because she brought the offending underwear, she's sort of lumped into the fan service nightmare by association.
That whole scene was messed up because they're in the room and she suddenly starts taking her clothes off and you have no idea why, and then it turns out like they did it so they could examine her whatever condition, but that scene was some bullshit, man.
C tier because I feel like there's not a lot going on with her character. Like I really like her theme song as music, just as a thing that I like to listen to, but in terms of like, oh girl, please, I know you're little, but please get better taste. I want that for you. Yeah, she's kind of like a more egregious version of Hanekawa, where like I want to see where her character is going, but the actual writing of her arc ended up being so thin because every emotion she feels is about sort of this savior vision she has about Araragi. And indeed, not even about, like Peter said, not even about her one good dear friend who never talks to her during this arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got her in probably D. I would. It sounds like that might be moved up depending upon future arcs, but yeah, her whole character arc is just being obsessed with Araragi, which even for this series is pretty.
Okay. Yeah, you're saying
great.
Spicy take, but after seeing the future arcs, I put her in A tier, but
okay.
All right, I'm prepared. I'm prepared to embrace that.
Position,
I want that for her.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, if only all of them could move up to S, that'd be great. But that's in Nisio Isen's hands, not mine.
Okay, time for my Yoi.
Okay, D tier because every scene with her makes me want to die. C tier in a vacuum. Just like I tend not to like bratty kid characters, but I feel like if she were to interact with literally anybody besides Araragi, I would probably like her fine.
Yeah, I think C tier even without the vacuum, because the context in which she appears is often unfortunate, but I like the amount of shit she gives Araragi. Also, that reaction image from I posted in the Slack earlier. I'm going to get a lot of mileage out of that one, so thank you very much, Mayoi.
Make it the icon for this episode, please.
That's what I'm doing.
Yes.
So that's some of that mileage. Is the thumbnail for this podcast.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, she belongs there for now, at least. You know, she's got some pretty great dialogue with Araragi coming up, but okay. Who else? Is there anybody else? I guess Oshino.
I guess
Best girl.
I'm gonna put him D tier because I don't care about him, which is weird because he's an archetype I should care about. I like scruffy drifter characters who are secretly dads, but he's so held at arm's length by this part of the story that I do not care. He is a plot device.
Yeah, I might put him in C just because I think some of the shit he says to Araragi might be to push Araragi indirectly in certain directions, or at least that's the reading that I got. But yeah, other than that, he seems to be kind of held at arm's length narratively. So.
Yeah. All right, and let's last but not least, our good.
There's also Shinobu, but she's not really a character yet either.
Yeah, no, she's really not.
Shinobu, the last one.
Oh god. Okay, anyways. Kisu will be fun.
I can't believe Senjogahara is actually best girl completely in another class based on this ranking.
She has the most character development and a complete arc.
Yeah. Amazing. How often does that happen to the main girl?
Yeah, and then Araragi, I think, belongs in hell.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Is there a lower tier than F tier? Is there a garbage can tier?
I think some people do put in trash tier, so
It would be like if it was just Araragi with Senjogahara, B tier. Every other Araragi, trash tier, garbage. Actually, no. Again, if he weren't a fucking creep, I would kind of like his horny bro relationship with Kanbaru.
Oh, I love that.
Sadly,
aspect
all of
it, yeah.
I sort of enjoy the jocular, the sort of jocular teasing that they have going on, but alas, I can't. Like with him, you phrased it, I think, as malicious when we were talking off mic, like his creeping on really young girls, and yeah. I can't separate that or write it off as like, oh, you're not thinking about the context of what you're saying. No, you're being a fucking creep.
And you're doing it. He's very self-conscious of the fact that he's a creep, and then he does it anyways. Like he'll literally say, do I have lowly tendencies? Signs point to no. Time to go fondle this girl's boobie.
What boobs? She's 10.
he posts on 4chan.
Yeah.
All right.
No, he's kicked off of 4chan for violating the one 4chan rule.
Wow.
No Yotsuba porn.
Oh, I didn't learn about that one.
When I was like 17, I spent like a week on 4chan, and then I decided, no, this isn't for me. And that was before 4chan was even the worst thing ever, the A board anyway.
Okay, well, I learned something new today.
Well, anyways, with that, thanks for listening to Chatty AF, the Anime Feminist podcast. If you like what you heard, leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. It really helps people to find our podcast. If you really, really liked what you heard, subscribe to our Patreon. It helps us create content like this and write reviews and edit articles from a feminist anime perspective. And you get to join our Discord, where you can talk about anime butts in the anime butt chat and many other things. It's a really wonderful space. You can follow us on many different social platforms. You can find all of those at our link tree, which is Vrai. What's our link tree?
It's linktr.ee/animefeminist.
Thank you, Vrai.
Yay.
And the next set of episodes, we will be covering Kizu Monogatari. So if you're following along at home, go ahead and you can watch Kizu Monogatari. I promise it is better than anything that we've seen so far, except for maybe Hitaki's episodes. It is good. So go ahead and watch those, and then we'll come right back and talk all about it next episode. With that, see y'all later.